Good afternoon. I'm Don Maxwell from Live IT Academy. Today's lesson in Excel 2016 is on absolute cell reference or using absolute cell reference. Well, when you copy a formula from one cell to another, Excel automatically adjusts the cell reference in the copied formula to reflect the new formula's location. That is what we call a relative cell, right? Relative cell reference. For example, if we should have a formula, let's put a formula here, equal, and we're just going to add these two numbers here, January and February together, right? So now we have a formula here with January and February. So notice in the formula bar, it says C6D6. If I should go ahead and fill down to 13, right, using the fill handle, fill down to 13, you'll see that the D6, 7, 8, 9, right? So that's called a relative cell reference, right? All right, let's go ahead and remove this. Clear content. Let's clear the content. Now, there are times when we don't want that cell or that specific cell to change, right? We want it to stay constant. In other words, we want that cell, whenever we put it in a formula and we copy that formula, to remain constant, right? That is what we're going to call a absolute cell reference. An absolute cell reference is a cell reference that always stays constant, even when you copy a formula that contains that reference in a new location. It stays the same. So we'll see how that works. Well, to know, in order to do that, the absolute cell reference contain what we call a $ symbol in front of the name of the cell. Like, for example, $A$1. Like A1 would be $A$1. That means that would be a constant cell. In our case, B18 will be our constant cell. So B18 will use a constant cell. So again, you're probably familiar with this report. It's simply Eastern Region Sales. We have our sales rep here. We have the different locations that they belong to, New York and so on. And January, we have data from January through March, first quarter data. We have refunds, and we have the total sales less the refund here. So this amount is what that salesperson made. So what we're going to do is pay them a 5% commission on that amount. All right, so in order to do that, let's go ahead and click on the resultant cell. Let's pick the first record, Donna Simpson's record, and under commission, because we're calculating commission, we're going to put the equal sign. Let's go ahead and type the equal sign. And then we're going to go ahead and select the cell that has the 5% in it, right? Now notice it's just B18 at this point. If I use the toggle key, the F4 key, look what happens when I press F4. I toggled to an absolute cell reference symbol. See that? F4. Now, F4 is pretty tricky. So, well, not tricky, but if you keep pressing F4, you'll see that you have either absolute column, absolute cell, which is the full name B18 with the $, or notice you have the $ in front of the 18. That would be absolute row. The number will not change, but the column will, right? They have absolute before the column, like for the B, then you know B will remain constant, but the 18, the row numbers will change. All right, so to have a absolute cell reference, we have to make both of them have the dollar symbol in front of the row and, well, in front of the column and in front of the row, right? So notice that the 5 is highlighted with an animation around it. That means we have selected that cell, and I've gone ahead and I pressed the F4 key to make it absolute reference. Now, if you wanted to go in and type it yourself, that's fine, and that will work too. If you type the dollar before the B and the dollar, that's fine. But I find it easier to use the toggle switch, toggle key F4, right? And press the F4, it turns into, or it toggles back and forth. All right, so what we want to do is to calculate the commission. So let's go ahead and do Shift 8. Right, that puts the asterisk because we're going to be multiplying here, right? We're simply going to be multiplying. We're going to be multiplying the 5% times the total sales. So notice the animation, the difference in color. See the color, right? Because I select B18. Now I've selected G6. That's in my formula bar here. Right, and it's also in my cell here, right? And let's go over this again. Absolute cell reference would be the B18 because it has the dollar sign, and the relative cell would be G6, right? So I would expect the column, the G column, to change to 6, 7, 8, 9, so on, right? But I expect the B18 to remain constant, never change, right? And again, this is a cell reference within a formula. It's in a formula. All right, so let's go ahead and press the enter button, or you can press the enter button here, or you can press the enter button on your keyboard. Doesn't matter, right? And we do have a commission amount. This is 5% of the total here, right? 5% of the total. All right. So now that we have that commission amount, we want the same for the other records. We want to calculate the commission amount for the other reps, right? So if we place our cursor, again, we're going to use the fill handle. You're familiar with the fill handle, right? We place it on the square at the lower right hand of the active cell. It turns into a plus sign. Now I can drag, right? Using my mouse, I drag that plus sign down to the last record, Jerome, right? 13. And you will see that the calculation, 5% for each one. All right, so let's go take a look at the 5%. Remember, this is copied, right? We copied the formula from H6 to H7 through 13. We copied the formula, all right? And we note that we didn't want B18 to change, so we made it absolute. So if you go to the H7, you'll see that B18 remained while G7, right? Then G8, but B18 remains constant. It doesn't change, see? Right? But so we have an absolute cell reference here and we have a relative cell reference here, and you could see the difference, right? Absolute cell reference never changed, while the relative cell reference allows the change, right? So that's a very powerful feature in Excel, right? Not always do we want relative cell references. Sometimes we do want absolute cell references, and you should know how to do it. Remember, it's the symbol $ before the column and before the row, right? Keep in mind that you can have an absolute row or an absolute column as well, right? Simply where you put the $ right? Where you put the dollar sign will matter, right? You can have an absolute column or an absolute row, or you can have an absolute cell, right? And all the absolute means it never changes. If it's an absolute column, that column will never change, but the rows will change. If it's an absolute row, then the row will never change, but the column will change, right? If it's an absolute cell reference, the cell itself never change. As in our case here, as you go down, you see all of them are multiplied by this B18 as we have in that formula, right? And don't forget the F4 key. We said the F4 key allows us to toggle between absolute and relative cells, right? With it, whenever we have a formula in the cell, when we're creating a formula, we can toggle between absolute and relative simply by clicking on the F4 key, right? Good job, guys. I hope you understand absolute cell reference. Go ahead and practice that in your Excel spreadsheet, and I will see you again on the next topic. Okay? Have a good night.